Hey there again, everybody. Thanks for tuning in again. I hope you've liked the videos that I've put out. I've put a fair amount of time into them, and I hope you like the content. Um, um, I've been trying to watch some of the NHL playoffs. It's not really all that interesting anymore now that the Leafs are out, and the teams that you would expect to get eliminated, like Montreal and Columbus and all these other teams, are on their way out. So it's the NHL playoffs haven't been as fun as I would hoped, but I'm still following along. I have the bracket. I have submitted my brackets online, so I'm hoping my picks come out right. I did fairly well in the preliminary rounds, so other than Toronto, that's the only pick that I got wrong against Columbus. So we'll see how that goes. Um, but the Leafs are out, and unlike the previous summers where the media in this town has had plenty to write about when it comes to contracts, they haven't really spent too much time on creating, these ridiculous rumors and with Sportsnet having cleaned house a while back with Nick Kyprios and Doug McLean and all these guys gone, it's really lowered the amount of rumor mongering in Toronto, and there's no contract situation to talk about this year. Um, the Leafs have everyone up front signed, and they got Muzzin, Hall, and Riley signed on the back end, and they have Anderson and Campbell in net. So there really isn't much to talk about in terms of contracts. You can talk about Mikheyev and Dermott and all these things, but these are all like fringe around the just nibbling around the fringe. Small moves that's going to augment the team's bottom six, and I think that's really what they're going to focus on this year. They're going to focus on augmenting the bottom six and their bottom 3D. Um, there's going to be, for sure, there's going to be trades and, cheap veteran signings to fill out the defense for the Leafs. They have their top three guys. Like I said, Riley, Muzzin, and Hall, and Muzzin and Hall being their top shutdown pair. So I really don't think the Leafs are going to go big game hunting unless something opens up and they can maybe acquire a Hossa contract from Arizona, which is a $5.5 million contract to go with the 4.5 they have in cap space roughly this off season. So if they can do something like that and increase their cap space to 10 million, I could see them going after a big name D, but I don't think they're gonna do that unless they move out a guy like Riley in his final year and they're not looking to pay him 7 to 8 million long term. I could see that. Them going after a big name, and I think really in terms of big names, there's only just one, and that's Alex Petrangelo. So I don't know if John Tavares is the kind of guy that can convince him to come here for cheaper. Maybe instead of 8 million, he takes less. He takes 7 million, 6.5 on a 7 year deal. I mean, anything's possible, really. But the Leafs have 4.5 million to work with, and I think they're going to augment their bottom six, and I think that's going to come through trades. Johnson and Kapanen, I think, are pretty much done in Toronto. The Leafs have a lot of guys waiting in the wings, like Barabanov that they just signed. They have Korshkov, they have Ingval, they have Adam Brooks, they have Nick Robertson. All these guys can play in the bottom six, and Nick Robertson being a really good fit on the third line left wing, like we saw him in the playoffs with Kerfoot and Kapanen. But if it's not Kapanen, if it's Barabanov, if it's Korshkov, there's a lot of potential there. So I think that the Leafs can really utilize the assets that they have, and they are assets. Anybody out there who starts spewing nonsense, especially in the media from TSN, and saying Janssen is not an asset, you can't get nothing for him, you can't get nothing for Kapanen, blah 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 blah. These are the same guys. If you look at the last number of seasons, I mean, the Leafs drafted Matthews first overall, and then they made the playoffs, and it was, well, the young team overachieved. They lost to a contender in Washington. Every game was pretty much an overtime game. It was close. That series could have gone either way with a couple of lucky bounces. So, but they overachieved. They overachieved. And then they made the playoffs the following year. They went 7 games with Boston, another cup contender. You go 7 games. It's a learning year. The cup window is now open. TSN Sportsnet. The cup window is open. The Leafs have no backup goaltender and their defense sucks, but the cup window is open. So they make the playoffs again. They end up playing Boston first round. They're up 3-2 in the series. They end up losing in 7 games. Then it's, why can't they get out of the first round? Another media narrative driven by utter nonsense. They're not losing. This young team is not losing because they don't have talent or they're not playing the right system. You would like them to play a little bit more of a defensive system, but they don't have the defensemen to pull that off. They have a bunch of offensive guys, so they play the way that they play. And when they lose to cup contenders like Washington and Boston, it's possible for 2 good teams to play a good, hard-fought 7-game series, and eventually somebody has to lose. It's just the way it works. It's 7 games. Somebody has to lose. Somebody has to win. Now, if Boston would have lost to the Leafs 2 years in a row, do you think Boston would have? Blew it up, gone for the rebuild? Marchand, Bergeron, Pasternak. They got Tuukka Rask. They got Halak. They got Torrey Krug. They got all these great players. What do you think the narrative in Boston would have been? Okay, we lost to a good young team. It was hard fought. It's okay. But in Toronto, it's doom and gloom all the time. I mean, it's everything in Toronto is this made up narrative all the time. Look at last year. Darren Dreger and Bob McKenzie spewed 4 months, almost a year, unprecedented RFA season, unprecedented RFA summer, unprecedented RFA this, unprecedented RFA that. RFA is going to break some records. RFAs are going to do this. RFA is going to do that. What happened? Bob McKenzie and Darren Dreger. What happened? What happened to the unprecedented RFA season? Braden Point signs for 3 years and $6.75 million. Kyle Connor got 7 years at $7.142857. Mikko Rantanen signs for 6 years at $9.25. Patrick Laine got 6.75. Matthew Tkachuk in Calgary got 7 for 3. Charlie McAvoy got $4.9 million for 3. But guess what? Mitch Marner got paid. Unprecedented RFA summer. Mitch Marner got paid 6 years, $10.893. And you know what Bob McKenzie says when he comes on national TV? No, this is in the summer of unprecedented RFA. The Mitch Marner contract is really an outlier. Excuse me? You just said all the RFAs are going to break records. Mitch Marner is an outlier? And then Mikko Rantanen comes out before he signed his contract and said, I see Mitch Marner as a compare. Bob McKenzie says, Mikko Rantanen sees Mitch Marner as his comparison in contract talks. Mikko Rantanen signed for $9.25, which is I was yelling from every single social media platform in the world, Mitch Marner can't get more than 9 million flat. I got blasted from anybody and everybody. And then Bob McKenzie says, yeah, Mikko Rantanen, what he really meant by Mitch Marner as my comparison is, it's my place on the team. That's where my comparison is. We have Nathan McKinnon, who's definitely better than me. Auston Matthews is better than Marner, but that's what I really meant, Bob McKenzie clarifies. Because Bob McKenzie really knows what Mikko Rantanen is thinking. So Bob McKenzie comes out and says, Mikko Rantanen thinks Mitch Marner is his comparison. And he signed for 9.25. And then after Mitch signed, he goes, well, what he really meant was it's his place on the team is what he was really comparing. So that's Bob McKenzie and Darren Dreger bullshitting on national television and radio. None of you fans catch it. Unprecedented RFA season. So all it is in Toronto is made up narratives, made up stuff. Go Google Cody Franzen for Maple Leaf captain, and you'll see two articles, one by Michael Trakos and one by I forgot her name, Rosie something. They both wrote an article when Cody Franzen was here that he should be the next captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Cody Franzen, the next captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. The following season, he was gone, and now this guy, and then he disappeared. He sucked so bad. But these are the people covering the team. They have no clue what they're talking about. But guess what? Nick Kypreos has a podcast now on YouTube. He posted on YouTube. And the amazing rumors are back. Nick Kypreos. The Leafs are going to trade Frederik Andersen to Pittsburgh for Matt Murray. So Matt Murray's contract is up. He's an RFA, and his contract was $3.75 million, I believe. So you're telling me that Pittsburgh, who has Jari, who's a really good goalie, a cheap goalie, and they can go out into the UFA market and sign another veteran cheap guy, a team that's really close to the cap in Pittsburgh, they're going to trade for a goalie that makes $2 million more than Matt Murray. Is that what you're telling me? I don't know where these guys make this stuff up. Like, I don't know where they get it. It doesn't make any sense what you're saying. Like, but the Leafs supposedly, they suck really bad. You need to change up the core. They can't win with these guys. They said that in Toronto. They said that about Phil Kessel, Steen, Bozak, all these guys. Steen left, won a cup in St. Louis. Bozak left, won a cup in St. Louis. Phil Kessel left, won 2 cups in Pittsburgh. Come on, man. Enough with the bullshit in Toronto. You fans, you're one of the most knowledgeable fan bases in Toronto. You've seen this bullshit for years. They did it to Larry Murphy. They did it to a lot of people. Look how excited these people in Toronto, the same people who say the Leafs suck and their cup windows closed, never really open, to be honest with you, were so excited when David Clarkson signed in Toronto that they put him on the cover of the Toronto Sun. Wendell Clarkson. They compared him to Wendell Clark. How big of a loser did this guy turn out to be in Toronto? The Toronto Sun loved him. The Star loved him. The TSN, Sportsnet. It was material. It's content. It's content. And so they love it. And David Clarkson turned out to be a giant loser. He's not what the Leafs needed. Who pays a grinder who scores 20 goals a season max? Now I know he had a couple of good seasons, but overall, if you average it all out, the guy's a grinding bottom six, heart and soul 20 goal guy. It's fine, you can have guys like that, but to pay him as much as we did and to have to trade that contract and give up assets, but they loved it in Toronto. All the media outlets that say the Leafs suck right now and they need that. But now David Clarkson is a joke, and who makes the jokes? TSN, Sportsnet, all the newspaper columnists. When they need a joke, David Clarkson is that guy. Go back and call them on it every time they make the David Clarkson joke and say, hey, remember you wrote this article and you said this guy's the next coming of Jesus? But that's Toronto. We lose a series, blow it up, everybody sucks. Matthews is a loser. He's only been in the NHL 4 years and has been in the running for the Maurice Rocket Richard twice. His rookie year, where he lost out by 4 goals to Sidney Crosby and won imagine if he would have won the Maurice Rocket Richard trophy and the Calder that year. And then he missed out on the Richard trophy by 1 goal this year because the season ended prematurely, and it is what it is. But everybody sucks. There's no leadership. Hey, Pittsburgh just lost to Montreal pretty handily. Does Pittsburgh lack leadership? Is Sidney Crosby the guy who has no leadership? He can't lead his team? Or was this one of those unprecedented seasons where, 4 months off, it's hard for some guys to rev it back up and to get into that mode again? Washington almost got swept by the New York Islanders. Do they lack leadership? TJ Oshie, Nicholas Backstrom, Alexander Ovechkin, all those guys. Is that what Washington lacks? Leadership? Because they almost got smoked by the New York Islanders? So now the Islanders have all this leadership from nowhere. They didn't add anybody. But now New York Islanders have leadership and Pittsburgh and Washington don't. Is that what you're saying? That's why they're losing, right? Because they have no leadership. You're saying that's why the Leafs lost? No, the Leafs lost because they didn't execute. They didn't play well. Their shooting percentage 5-on-5 was 1.9 or something like that. It's an astronomically, historically impossible number. What had to go wrong for that shooting percentage to show up 5-on-5? It's impossible. And if you saw the games, you noticed Tavares' empty net hits the post. Mikheyev tips the puck, goes off the crossbar. Matthews is hitting the post, coming down the wing. He wrists it right by the goal. He hit the post. That's fine. Sometimes it doesn't go your way. But to say no leadership, you got to blow it up. These guys are losers. Trade everybody, fire everybody. The Leafs didn't get rid of their coaches because of what happened this season. Paul McFarland was supposed to leave for the OHL. They announced it in the middle of the season he was supposed to leave. So this is an opportunity for them to go out. And now, there's the rumors about Bruce Boudreau maybe coming to the Leafs. He's not a great coach that's accomplished a lot in his career, but in a very specific role, whether it's managing the defense, whether it's managing the penalty kill, whatever it is, in the right role, he could be a great asset to the Leafs. But overall, bringing in Bruce Boudreau is a disaster. But the media in Toronto loves that idea because you know what? Game one of the season, whenever it is next year, December 1st, whatever it is, game one, the Leafs lose and they lose bad. The first article you're going to see is maybe the right guy to coach the Leafs is already behind the bench. You don't want that in Toronto. These guys are dying for Bruce Boudreau to be behind the bench, a defensive coach who only thinks defensive minded, who coaches not to lose and doesn't coach to win. He's a good coach in a specific role, and I get all that. I personally wouldn't hire him in Toronto because I know the media and I know the stupidity level of the people who write the articles and talk on TV. And Bruce Boudreau would just be, it's the perfect storm to talk about firing another coach. You got to give Keefe at least one full season. Now, if you sign Bruce Boudreau to a 2-year contract or something like that, and Keefe really sucks next year, and the Leafs don't improve defensively, then yes, all these rumors are going to start. And if Bruce Boudreau is here and he's behind the bench, then the articles start even more about Bruce Boudreau replacing Sheldon Keefe, and it's not fair to the guy. You can't work in this kind of environment. You can't be looking over your shoulder with every decision you make. If you're gonna give the man a chance, give him the chance, give him free reign, and just let him do what he needs to do. Don't make him look over his shoulder. Don't add all these things to the equation. I mean, Dubas is a young GM and he took over the Leafs. And with the amount of chatter online from the fans and everything like that, and you know, the Leafs Nation is highly emotional, and they sway one way or the other really quickly. And you know, you see it online. If it's a great win, the Leafs are amazing. If they lose, especially one crazy thing that's never happened in 100 years happens, and the Leafs lose to a third string goalie, regardless of who he is, it's a joke for the next 3,000 years. But it's Toronto, and this young GM is trying to work in this environment where Bob McKenzie, Darren Dreger, Nick Kypreos are literally pulling rumors out of their ass. Unprecedented RFA season. Where was it? All I heard for 1 year was these guys are so young and they're so talented and they're going to get crazy money. Charlie McAvoy got $4.9 million. Torrey Krug signed. Kachuk signed. Laine signed. Laine, 40 goal seasons. The guy got 6.75. Marner can't score 20 goals to save his life. And God forbid you should ever bring up Marner's first 2 years of his entry-level contract, because nobody wants to hear 61 and 69 points and 19 and 22 goals. Nope, none of that matters. He got 26 goals and 94 points. He's a superstar. Let's give him superstar money. No playmaker in the history of the NHL has ever been paid more than 9.25. No playmaker in the history of the game. So you're telling me that Marner is the greatest of all time? Greater than Gretzky? Anyways. So Nick Kypreos is back, and his Frederik Andersen to Pittsburgh rumors are live and kicking, and Leaf fans are really getting behind that one, because I don't know what they think about Andersen. I don't blame anything on Frederik Andersen. I think he's a great goalie. He's really spoiled this fan base in terms of the moment he showed up, he solidified the Leafs. Soon as he showed up, the Leafs became a playoff team, and even regardless of how bad their defense has been over the last 2, 3, 4 years, the moment he showed up, everything got solidified and they became a good team. Leaf fans, I don't know what happened to your memory, but do you not remember what it was like before Frederik Andersen showed up? It was a disaster in Toronto. It's hard to find a number one goalie that can do what he does. The guy puts up decent stats behind a Swiss cheese defense. It's How much more can you want from the guy? The guy, he dives, he makes saves, he makes the most acrobatic saves, but you can't do this every single night. You need the team to put a better defense in front of him and play a little bit of a better defensive structure. And that's the coach's job to implement that. But you can't put it on the goalie. Like Carey Price's numbers in Montreal have not been great over the last couple of years. But are you going to say Carey Price is a horrible goaltender? No. The guy can't do that. He can't be a superstar every single night. It wears on you mentally, physically. The Leafs need to hold on to Frederik Andersen. They need to pay him. But Luke Fox of Sportsnet writes the Toronto Maple Leafs goaltender Frederik Andersen has a year left on his deal at $5 million cap hit. There may not be a big upgrade on the free agent market, which there isn't. Jacob Markstrom could re-sign in Vancouver. Braden Holtby, Corey Crawford appear to be on the downturn, and Robin Lehner is the top UFA goalie, but he wouldn't come cheap. Are you telling me that you would rather sign a 30-year-old goalie who has 2 good seasons under his belt to more money than you wouldn't rather sign Frederik Andersen? Or you want Cam Talbot instead? Cam Talbot, Robin Lehner, Corey Crawford, Braden Holtby. These are all old goalies who are not doing great things right now. You stick with who you know. Minnesota Wild and the New York Rangers and Pittsburgh Penguins all have goaltenders available for trade. Really? Is Pittsburgh going to trade away Tristan Jarry? No. But Luke Fox and Nick Kyprios are talking about Frederik Andersen, and they're talking about Freddie Andersen moving. Dan Kingerski of Pittsburgh Hockey Now writes, Pittsburgh Penguins GM Jim Rutherford needs to figure out his goaltending situation for the next season, and it appears that Tristan Jarry will get a new contract and that Matt Murray will be moved. Now, he is an RFA. They do own his rights. They will qualify him, and I'm sure they're going to try to trade his rights. I don't know how much it's worth. His resume isn't great. He's got 2 cups on the back of Marc-Andre Fleury. So I don't want him in Toronto. I don't want Matt Murray in Toronto. He's shit the bed ever since Marc-Andre Fleury left. He continues with the free agent market for goaltenders could include Braden Holtby, Lehner, and Crawford, and Markstrom. The Vegas Golden Knights could put Marc-Andre Fleury back on the trade block if they re-sign Lehner. And the New York Rangers may also be looking to move a goalie. Now, me personally, the only way I would move Frederik Andersen or make a change in net is if I can get a guy like Marc-Andre Fleury. The guy, regardless of his age, the guy is an amazing goalie. He will always be an amazing goalie. He's always worth this money. And the guy writes, Murray's trade value has decreased this season as he posted an .899 save percentage, though he did not have a good second half of the regular season. Given the flooded goalie market this offseason, the trade value for Murray could be a second-round pick and a prospect. So you're looking at a second-round pick and a B prospect at max. Could the Penguins find a team that is interested in Murray, but also in Jack Johnson with 3 years left at 3.25, or Nick Bjugstad, who has 1 year and $4.1 million left. So he's writing, they could trade Matt Murray, but take on this contract and we'll sweeten the pot a little bit. Pittsburgh's in trouble. They made a huge mistake. They should have traded Jari. They should have traded Matt Murray and held on to Marc-Andre Fleury, and they would have been perennial Stanley Cup favorites. Another rumor. In Edmonton, there's been talk that the Edmonton Oilers, so this is from David Staples of the Edmonton Journal. He writes that the Edmonton Oilers should be looking to trade Oscar Klefbom, Darnell Nurse, or Adam Larsson this offseason. Doesn't think that they should trade any of those three, but they should look to move Chris Russell. Brian Burke was on Bob Stouffer's radio show and said that their defense needs an upgrade or a change, that a couple of guys could use a change of scenery. Stauffer also asked about Larsson, Nurse, and Klefbom. And the quote says, any one of the three above, I like them all, so I'm not picking on them. I think Darnell Nurse gives a component that really makes their team different. I think in terms of mobility and hostility, but yes, something. It's hard to make trades when you're in cap trouble, but it might be time for a change of scenery. Stauffer brings up Adam Larsson to the Toronto Maple Leafs for winger Kasperi Kapanen or Johnsson. And Burke responded with, those might be fits. Those are good. Those guys are both good players that you mentioned from Toronto. I think Larsson is a really good player. He didn't have a great season, but I think he's always good as a shutdown guy. Now, at this point, Adam Larsson isn't the prime target for the Leafs, but there was a time where Toronto and Edmonton had a deal done for Connor Brown, and they were going to get Jujhar Khaira and someone else, I forget, a defenseman. And that deal fell through because the player got injured. Matt Benning, that's right. Jujhar Khaira and Matt Benning. The Leafs were going to get two players for Connor Brown, who was signed at 2.2 or 2.1 million. And I think Kasperi Kapanen or Johnsson, if you could trade a Johnsson, because the Leafs now with Nick Robertson and Barabanov and Mikheyev have three good left wingers. If you could trade Johnsson for Adam Larsson straight up, or maybe they add a third or a fourth or something like that, that wouldn't be a bad deal. Adam Larsson in a lesser role, maybe just playing beside Morgan Rielly being the offensive guy, the puck mover, and Adam Larsson is more of a stay-at-home defenseman. He could thrive in that role. But, you would have to scour the NHL and see what the value for Kapanen and Johnsson is. I think they have real good value. Kapanen and Johnsson have both shown that they can play with guys like Tavares and Matthews and put the puck in the net. In a place like Edmonton, where they really could use wingers and not have to keep putting Draisaitl and McDavid together, I think guys like Kasperi Kapanen and Johnsson, they're really good fits over there. Because Leaf fans know how fast these guys can skate, and they can't play make with speed. And both Draisaitl and McDavid are high flyers, so those are definitely good fits. But you never know. Maybe there's something better out there, but that's not a bad deal. Brian Lawton was talking to Bob Stouffer as well about the Oilers' defense. Lawton would be concerned about Clefbaum's injury history. He's well thought of around the league, but he's on a friendly deal, but he does have his injury problems. Mark Spector of Sportsnet expects that Clefbaum, Nurse, and Ethan Bear will be back with the Oilers, and that trading Nurse would be a bold move. Spector thinks that the Oilers will trade Larson and the asking price will be high, as there are plenty of teams who need a player like him, like the Toronto Maple Leafs. So over the years of being a Leaf fan, you definitely notice Leafs get thrown in there, and then the price goes up for a guy, but he never comes to Toronto. Don't believe those rumors, because they're just using the Leafs to raise the price. It is what it is. Spector thinks the Oilers need to need more defensive defensemen, and Stouffer thinks that they need more puck moving defensemen. So there is the conflicting ideologies there. For sure, Edmonton doesn't need more offensive defensemen. They can score, but like we saw in the preliminary round, Edmonton was scoring 4, 5, 6 goals, could not stop the puck from getting into their net. So Spector thinks that they need more defensive defensemen, and there's a lot of guys out there, like a Radko Gudas is inexpensive. There's a bunch of guys, that are veteran defensive defensemen that are cheap. You can go out there and get. Luke Fox of Sportsnet was talking about Spezza and his pending unrestricted free agency. See, I love Spezza, and obviously being a hometown boy, you want him to have success here, and you want the Leafs to do well, and you want him to be a part of it, and you want him to experience that. As a fan, I think about the positives, and I love it. But you can't complain about the fourth line being soft or the Leafs being soft and then put Spezza on the fourth line. So there's two conflicting ideas there, thoughts there. If you complain about grit and toughness and all these things, you cannot sign Spezza and put him on the fourth line. So something has to give. Either Spezza gets signed to the league minimum and maybe, I don't know, he plays on the third line in a more offensive role. I can see that. You have to put him in an offensive role or in on the second power play and things like that. To put him as a penalty killer or on the fourth line, you're misusing him. He shouldn't be forced to fight in the playoffs to get this team going. The guy is, I don't know, 30-something years old. He has 4 daughters at home. You shouldn't put him in that situation. The Leafs need to go get guys that can play the role on the fourth line. Now they got Clifford, which is good. They have Adam Brooks and they have Gauthier. And that fourth line can be flipped to be more of a grinding, rugged fourth line. But you can't do it with Spezza there, so it's hard. Leafs have $4.5 million in cap space if they don't make any moves, and to spend $700,000 or $750,000 on Spezza and have him play this lesser role, I don't know if it makes sense. And yeah, so the rumors are flying. There's a lot of things going on in Toronto. William Nylander is trending on Cap Friendly. Everyone's looking at his contract and how friendly it is to trade. I think he's owed $20 million over the next 5 years, which is roughly $4 to $4.5 million. I think there's just over 20 million. So I think he's, in real money, he's owed $4 to $4.5 million for the next 4 or 5 seasons, and his cap hit is 6.9. So he's definitely bang for the buck at 31 goals this year, and everyone's looking to trade him out. And again, you complain about no leadership, soft, these wingers stay to the outside and they're floaters and this and that and that and that. And then you want to trade William Nylander, who's the only puck cycling right winger on the team that can hold on to the puck and cycle it. But Mitch Marner is fine. Mitch Marner is the poster boy for everything that you complain about. Softness, floater, stays to the outside, doesn't get to the inside. He lacks grit, leadership, all these things. He is the poster boy, and he's getting paid almost $11 million. So, if anything, Marner's the guy that has to go, not Nylander, not Kapanen. These guys, they score in the playoffs and they do what they have to do. But yeah, so in terms of the rumors, there's a lot: goaltending, defense, trades. I definitely believe that we're gonna see some moves regarding Janssen, Kapanen, with guys like. Don't forget, the Leafs signed Lehtinen, who was defenseman of the year. So they do actually have 4 defensemen with Sandin, Liljegren, and Rosen still in the group. That makes 7 with Marincin. That's 8. But they do have to go get some. If Lehtinen actually can't play the right side, which they say he can, and he plays with Riley, and you already have Muzzin and Hall as your shutdown pair, then you just need to fill out the bottom 3 guys, 5, 6, and 7. And honestly, if Sandin and Liljegren are not good enough and you have to play Marincin, then you trade those guys. You trade Sandin, Dermott. Dermott's another guy whose contract is up. He's an RFA this summer, and he hasn't done enough. If he wants to resign in Toronto, he's going to get squeezed. He's going to get squeezed, and they're going to offer him something starting with a 1. And Hall got $2 million. It's real disrespectful, but you haven't done anything. You've gotten all these opportunities with injuries to step up and play a bigger role and do better things. And I had high hopes for Dermott, but at this point, he gets injured, there's an injury in Muzzin, and Marincin is the guy who steps in, not Sandy, not Liljegren, and not Rosen. So at that point, if those guys are not good enough to play, and you're a perennial playoff team looking to become a contender, then you have to go trade those young guys and get assets back that can play. You cannot put Marincin in a moment where it's do or die, because he's going to throw pizzas up the middle, and that's what he does. I personally hope I never see Marincin play another game for the Maple Leafs, to be honest with you. Because if he does, it means we lack depth and we didn't make the right moves, and the Leafs are going to be poorer defensively because of it. Not because I don't like the guy. The guy's a perfectly nice guy, but I'm just speaking overall for the success that I want to see for the Leafs. If they put a Marincin in the lineup, it just means they don't have depth. They don't have better prospects. He's the last resort, so it is what it is. So yeah. Rumors, coaching rumors, goalie rumors, defenseman rumors, trading wingers. There's no contracts to talk about, so there's going to be plenty of rumors this summer. But if you've noticed, since Lou came in, and even with Dubas, the Leafs are pretty tight-lipped. They don't leak anything out. If the player or the agent doesn't leak anything out, the Leafs themselves are not the Leafs of old before Lou came in with Brian Burke and Nonis and those guys. And those guys were constantly leak things. So rumors are mostly just made up at this point. There's actually a new one that says Elliot Friedman said that the Leafs are pretty much 100% going to sign, or 90% going to sign, Joe Thornton to a 1-year, $1 million deal. That would be interesting. That would mean a couple of things. if the Leafs are dead set on signing someone like Joel Thornton, who's going to be your third line winger or your fourth line winger to play with Spezza, God forbid that should happen. It means that they're looking to move guys. They might move that entire third line, Johnsson, Kapanen, and Kerfoot. And that's interesting. So Elliot Friedman is one of those guys I trust. Him and Pierre LeBrun are the two guys I trust the most. They don't talk out of the both sides of their mouths like the way Dreger and McKenzie do. They're more trustworthy. So when he says, the Leafs are looking to sign this guy at $1 million, that's really interesting. I don't know. I doubt they would put Joe Thornton on the wing. They would most probably use him as a third or fourth line center. So that means big moves are coming. The Leafs are not going to touch the top six. I'm telling you that right now. The Leafs will not trade any players from their top six forward group. Matthews, Tavares, Nylander, Marner, Hyman. These guys, these five guys are not going anywhere. People love to create rumors about Nylander and stuff like that. Those guys are not going anywhere. The Leafs are going to live and die with those guys for as long as Dubas is around. They're going to live and die with those guys. So they're going to keep augmenting their bottom six in the bottom of their defense until they get it right. And I believe that's what you got to do. Because you see people like TSN and Sportsnet talking about Toronto's cup window. It's open, it's closing, blah, blah, blah. Tavares and Hedman have been together for 11 years. And if you include Kucherov, those three have been together for 7 years. No playoff success. But I don't see Bob McKenzie coming on saying, these guys are all 30 years old. Their cup window's closed. No, they don't. They're perennial cup contenders. Meanwhile, Stamkos, Hedman, and Kucherov haven't experienced any kind of success in the playoffs. These guys haven't done shit. But that's the bias, right? In Toronto, it's all doom and gloom all the time, but Tampa Bay is the best team. Tampa Bay hasn't done shit. Tampa Bay, 11... Matthews and Tavares have been together for 2 seasons, and it's already time to blow it up. Hedman and Stamkos have been together for 11 years, and if you include Kucherov, they've been together for 7 years. That 3. But Matthews and Tavares only get 2 seasons, and, it's time to blow it up. These guys can't win. They got no leadership. They lack everything. It's unbelievable, the stuff that you hear in this town. It makes 0 sense. Sometimes. Leafs lose, they lack leadership. Obviously, they got appointed. The one thing you can actually measure is not tangible. But Pittsburgh loses, they have tons of leadership. Tampa last year got swept by Columbus. Swept. People said all sorts of stuff about Tampa. Well, if Stamkos and Hedman have been together for 11 years and they got swept by Columbus in the first round, after those 11 years, isn't it time to blow it up? Isn't it time for them to do something different? Obviously, you can't win with those guys. Those guys are losers. No, in Tampa, you can't trade away talent. Who are you going to trade Hedman to? Well, no matter what the return is, it's never going to be great. Look at Phil Kessel. We traded this guy and took $2 million of his contract. And the guy went off to win two Stanley Cups. He's in Arizona. He's scoring a bunch of goals. And what did we get for him? Kapanen? What did we get out of that trade? Nothing. You can't trade superstars because the return is never going to be equal. So you're gonna have to stick with them. And like the way Washington did with Ovechkin and Nick Backstrom for 14 years, it took them that long to figure it out. 14 years. Ovechkin finally said, okay, I understand what we have to do to win. And then he fixed it, and then they won. Imagine if Washington would have blown it up as fast as Toronto wants to blow everything up. Ovechkin would have been traded 3 times already. Stamkos and Hedman would have been traded 3 times already. 11 years. You think if Matthews and Tavares are together for 11 years and their playoff record looks like Tampa's, that this town won't lynch them? Because it doesn't make any sense. Every year is different. Every year the circumstances are different. The teams you play in the playoffs are different. There's a pandemic. There's a 4-month break. Every season the situation is different. You can't just say, oh, because they didn't win, they don't have any leadership, this, that. That's not how it works. Everybody keeps heaping 50 years of disappointment on these players. Tavares just got here. It's not his fault that the Leafs haven't done anything since 1967. It's not. But let's put all that weight on him and let's see how he performs. He's going to do great. Anyways, on to bigger and better positive news. The Raptors are doing great. They didn't play too well in game 2, but they found a way to pull it out. And that's what depth and experience and talent does. Raptors have a lot of depth. Their bench is really good. And guys like Norm Powell and Fred VanVleet are stepping up on nights where guys like Lowry and Siakam and Gasol are struggling. So you got to have a bunch of guys to do what they do. They play great defense, and defense wins championships. Leafs. So we're looking for another repeat this year. Toronto Raptors, let's go, boys. See you guys soon. Thanks for tuning in.